I got an email earlier today from Matthew. Matthew is the man who is living in Safe Space 1 down at the foreshore, the Culemborg area, and he spoke to us about how he ended on the streets and what it is like to live in Safe Space 1. And I got an email from him today to say, I just want to thank you once again for having me on air with you. I have been given a weekend job at one of the food suppliers at the farmers market near the V&A, so he's going to be working there over the weekends, and we hope that that will lead to something else. I also really do appreciate that you've given us, those people on the streets, a voice, and perhaps helped change a few minds about the homeless. I'm looking at starting a podcast to try to get more stories told. And I have spoken to our management to say, shouldn't we be getting involved in this and helping to facilitate it in some way? In the wake of Matthew's contribution on air, I got an email from Bronwyn, who tells me that she is currently living in an old age home, but was homeless for 10 years. Hello, Bronwyn.
Hello, John. Thanks for having me on.
A privilege. How long ago did you manage to get off the streets and into more secure shelter?
Well, basically, I was on the streets, and I've been in a shelter now for must be close on now 12 years.
Okay.
And I was on the streets for a long time.
And how did you end up there? What is your story?
A lot of people have the thing that you become homeless because of drugs or alcohol or this or that or whatever, but it's not. A lot of the cases, it's circumstances. And I basically led a very, very busy life and had a lot of responsibilities, and things overwhelmed me. And I ended up having PTSD and also nervous breakdown. And I lost everything. I couldn't work. I couldn't keep up everything. And before I knew it, it's such an insidious thing. Before I knew it, I was literally walking the streets. I remember carrying a suitcase and being alone on the beach and not knowing where to go to. And it's the weirdest thing. It's so traumatic, but it can happen to anybody, anyone.
What was your family situation at the time that this was going on in your life, Bronwyn?
I was basically living on my own, and my family, who are awesome, by the way, they were actually just coming out themselves, and I kept a lot away from them because I didn't want to be a burden or a trouble. So I did hide a lot of what was happening to me, and so basically that is, I ended up eventually in shelters.
And how did you spend your days?
The thing is that when you're on the streets, I think, especially as it's different, like a white suburban grandmother, people can't believe that you're actually homeless. They don't tend to think of a person being homeless like this. And I think if it wasn't for the help of the shelters and the people that got me into those shelters, I don't know how I would have coped, because you lose everything on the street. You lose your dignity. It's frightening. It's a scary thing. And when you're walking along the street and you're looking into people's homes that used to be like your home, you can't believe it's happening to you. So there's a lot of trauma that's involved with homelessness. And there's a big difference between street people and homelessness, which is something I learned a lot of in the shelters.
What would you say is the most significant difference between street people and homelessness?
I think that street people, bless them, they want to be on the streets in a sense. They don't like the rules, the regulations, and everything that's put onto them in shelters. And I think homeless people are often there due to circumstances like myself. And basically what we really, really need is a hands up. We want to work. We want to get back on our feet. We want to be in any way that shelters can improve our circumstances and help us, or that the public can be more aware of us and who we are as people.
I mean, street people, if we are going to distinguish them from the temporarily and wanting no longer to be homeless, are people as well. Their circumstances are different, and the reasons why
Yeah,
they ended up on the streets. I mean, there's a lot of
yeah.
commonality. Sometimes it involves drugs. Sometimes it involves circumstances beyond the individual's control. Sometimes it involves disease, mental problems, and so on. Um,
I
did, did
think
did you
so.
have to beg on the streets?
No, I couldn't. I just couldn't. I think that's where a lot of my faith came in. I'm a person that's very faith, and I just prayed. And a lot of times things came to me where people would see you, and they would offer you things like a roll-on deodorant. I mean, I know people might think, what, a roll-on deodorant? You have no idea when you've got nothing how much that roll-on deodorant actually becomes to mean to you. And I'd love the public to be so aware of the smallest things that they can do to make people's lives like what I went through matter. There's so much you can do.
You described yourself as a white suburban grandmother, Bronwyn, and not my description. It
Yep,
was your description of yourself. Did that make
yep,
life?
yep.
Did that make things easier for you? That there was a greater compassion, a greater empathy, a greater willingness
No,
to help?
no. If anything, it actually made it worse because you come against a lot of prejudice. You come against, like, maybe she was a privileged white person or something like that. And the amazing thing was, to my mind, was when I was in the shelter and people had this misconception about me. And it was only when I went for the only job I could get in the shelter, which was on offer, was to be sweeping the streets. And, you know, those big dump trucks, those huge dump trucks, you know, that was the only job I could get. And I thought to myself, well, if that's it, that's it. And so what I did was I took the job, and for 3 months I swept the streets of Greenpoint, Sea Point, those places, riding on those dump trucks. I'll never forget it. It was terrifying. And I used to cry every day, but I kept at it. I kept at it. And that is what changed people's perceptions about me as a person, looking at me from a different angle. And I earned that respect. And they saw a different side to me, and then it changed everything for me. And so, yeah, I did that, and it was hard, but it was an incredible experience as well that I did. I'm glad I stuck it out.
Would you say there is a divide, a division between the way you characterized it, the street people who see their entire future as living on the street, and the homeless people who are in their minds temporarily homeless and looking for that leg up to get out of the homeless situation? Do those two, do they divide into camps that don't get on with each other? Or is there, when you're on the street, whether you are a street person or a homeless person, in your
Yeah,
divide, do
I'm
you get on and help each other?
absolutely. You know, I just think that poverty is a huge leveler. It's a huge leveler, whether you've come from a boardroom and you're down into a shelter now or on the street or whatever. You have this incredible empathy of helping each other. If I've got a little, you've got, I remember going to a job situation once, a little job interview, and the lady who did the laundry in the shelter gave me 10 Rand to get a taxi fare. And whatever I've got, you can have. Whatever you've got, we share. And I've never in my life experienced such an amazing encouragement and sharing between people that's so little, so little, and they give so much to each other because we're all in the same position, and we're there to help each other, and we have each other's backs. It's an amazing thing to experience. It really is.
Bronwyn, thank you so much for reaching out to me and for being willing to have the conversation that you've just had. I know I'm pretty certain that it's important that people hear your story, hear Matthew's story, and continue to hear stories of people who, for circumstances, I don't want to get into that, but for people who have been
Yes,
forced out of the comfortable homes that many of us still live in. Thank you very, very much for sharing your story with us, Bronwyn.